pastor. And the first thing I saw in this text is David's dilemma. Somebody shouts David's dilemma. Boy, y'all ain't with me tonight. Shout David's dilemma. I'm in the third verse. Life was getting the best of David. Problems were on every side. Seemed like walls were closing in on David, and David had a dilemma, and David tells us in the 55th number of the Psalms that his dilemma was basically threefold. First of all, he says the gossipers are gossiping. That's in verse 3a. He said, because the voice of the enemy. The gossipers were gossiping. Then he said the wicked were being wicked. That's in 3b. He says because of the oppression of the wicked. Then he says not only were the gossipers gossiping and the wicked being wicked, but thirdly David says the haters were hating. Preach, Betty Brown, oldest boy. And David said, because the gossipers were gossiping, because the wicked were being wicked, because the haters were hating, David says, I got a dilemma I got a problem. Life is about to get the best of me. Life lesson number one, if you're taking notes tonight, never be surprised when the enemy is doing his job. Preach, Betty Brown, older boy. Never be surprised when haters are hating, when wicked folk are being wicked, when the enemy is trying to destroy you. Don't be surprised, because that simply means the enemy is on his or her job. Oh my God, I wish I had my normal crowd in here. I said when the enemy is doing his or her job, don't be surprised. Be surprised when folk who you think love you turn out to be your enemy. Don't be surprised when folk you know don't like you are hating on the haters. Come on here and say something to me. But be surprised when folk you think love you, folk you think with you, folk you think pulling for you are the main one that's trying to tear you down. Hunch your neighbor and say, don't be surprised when the enemy is doing his job. And I'm looking at some folk now where the enemy, my God, the gossipers are gossiping. I mean, they talking about you. I mean, they calling you everything. Am I preaching to the right crowd? They calling you everything but a child of God. But I stop by to tell you, don't get upset when folk talking about you. Rejoice when they start talking about you, because when they talk about you, that puts you in mighty good company. Because I don't get disturbed when folk talk about me. I get disturbed when they stop talking, because when they talking about me, that let me know that I'm on their mind. That let me know I'm doing something. Because Negroes don't bother you when you ain't doing nothing. Negroes don't bother you when you ain't going nowhere. Negroes don't bother you when you ain't looking good, when you ain't riding good, when you ain't smelling good. It's only when you step out of the ordinary and decide I want to be special, when you step out and say, I ain't like y'all no more. I ain't going where y'all go no more. I ain't singing that same old tired song. I ain't doing that same old tired dance. I ain't going to them same old tired club. I ain't fooling around with them same old no good rascal married men. I'm tired of that mess you doing. I'm coming out. I ain't looking down on you because I just got out of the same clay. Isn't it strange how when folk get out of the same clay that you still in, they want to look down on you? The devil is a lie. I ain't looking down on you. All I'm trying to tell you is I know better now. And when I know better, hunch your neighbor and say, when you know better, you do better. Hunch your neighbor and say, talk about me as much as you please. The more you talk, I'm going down on my knee. I don't care. Is there anybody here who will rejoice because you don't care when Negroes talk about you? That just let me know I'm still looking good. That let me know I'm still riding good. I'm still smelling good. I may not have two nickels to rub together in my pocket, but you'll never know it, because I'm going to hold my chest out. I'm going to comb my hair. I'm going to put on my best clothes, and I'm going to stick my chest out, because I know who I am, and I know whose I am, and I know it ain't going to be this way always. Jesus said, rejoice when they talk about you. So next time somebody talking about you, say, baby, wait a minute, hold on a minute. Let me shout. 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 I feel a shout coming on here. What you doing shouting and they talking about you? That's why I'm shouting, because you. I just want to encourage y'all tonight. I just want to encourage y'all. Don't get disturbed when gossipers are gossiping. Just don't get connected up with the gossipers. Don't get disturbed when wicked folk are being wicked. I'm talking about his dilemma. Don't be disturbed when haters are hating. Hunt your neighbor and say, you're not a hater, are you? Come on, hunt your neighbor, ask him, say, are you? I say, he ain't preaching about you, are you? You know what a hater is? A hater is somebody that's always trying to get up by tearing you down. A hater is somebody, haters want what you got, but couldn't handle it if you gave it to them. Haters want to be who you are, but if they could walk a mile in your shoes half a day, they say, no. Haters want your car, but don't want the note. Haters want your house, but don't want the loan. Haters want your husband, but don't want the hell that come along with him. Haters. Somebody shout dilemma. Preach, Betty Brown. Older boy. David. Now the problem with David is his enemies was in his family. Help me preach this sermon. Now it's one thing when you know where your enemies are, but it's another thing when you find out the one you sleeping with. It's another thing when you find out the one that you helped. And do I have anybody in here that have realized and come to learn, brother, that it's the one that you help the most are the one that will hurt you the worst? The one that you done the most for, the one that you gone out your way where you did without so they can have, the one that you picked up and took them to work, the one that you kept their little nappy head children, the one that you let them borrow your dress, the one that you did for will be the biggest haters. David said this. He said, it's my familiar friends. Help me preach this sermon. That have turned their back. That have backstabbed me and turned on me. David allowed his dilemma to turn to depression. Well, be careful. No, ain't no almost. David allowed his dilemma to become, and I'm looking at some folk now. I know y'all want folk to think you got it all together. I know one folk think you ain't got no problem. I know you want folk to think, baby, you all listen 10 bag of potato chips with some cookies on the side. But I stop by to tell you, if you ain't careful, your dilemma will turn to depression. Be careful when you're going through. Because the more you go through, the more leverage the enemy will think he has. He says, y'all, look at verse 4. He said, my heart, you got it right, it's so pain within me. Somebody here got some heart trouble. And you know one thing, Reverend, is one thing to have trouble. Ain't nothing like heart trouble. Ain't nothing like having somebody break your heart. Ain't nothing like somebody who you think love you. David's boy Absalom had turned on him and was trying to take his kingdom. He said, my heart, verse 4, I ain't picking up, is so pained within me. And the terror of death, verse 4, is fallen upon me. Verse 5, he says, fearlessness and trembling are come upon me. Preach, Betty Brown, oldest boy. And horror have overwhelmed me. Two things. David said, I'm hurting and I'm scared. Oh, I'm looking at some folk who hurting. And I'm looking at some folk that's scared. And the Bible tells me to tell you that God ain't giving you. Preach this sermon for me, y'all. The spirit of fear. Hunch your neighbor and ask him, what you scared of? Because if God doesn't move, it ain't gonna work no how. Do I have a witness in here? David said, I'm hurting. And I'm thinking about some hurting folk where their dilemma has turned to depression. I'm thinking about that crackhead who is now in depression, can't find a job nowhere. And he like David, he said, David said, I'm scared and my heart is hurting. If you ain't careful, your dilemma will lead to depression. You'll go home and I'm looking at some people who are like David. They are about to enter into depression. I'm looking at some young ladies who are so tired, sick and tired of being tired. You've been praying, God, send me a husband. You've been living right. You've been doing right. You've been walking right. You come out and now all you do is go home, crawl up on your couch, and your only friend is your remote control. And you've been sitting in that one place so long or lying there, you ain't watching the TV now watching you. I'm looking at some folk who are married and they're in a dilemma. They're sick and tired of fussing and fighting, and like David, they desired an escape. Notice here, David's dilemma was he was hurting and he was scared. I got to go now from the depression to his desire, because if you ain't careful, your desires will control your destiny. Y'all missed that. Be careful what you start desiring in your depressive dilemma, because you will start desiring stuff that God be lonely long enough and folks start looking good to you, ain't never look good. Come on here and say something to me. Be lonely long enough, you'll start looking at folk, and I mean ugly can be like, you know, maybe if I bought him some tea, maybe if I gave him a bath, maybe. Hunch your neighbor and say, that ain't good for you. That ain't good for you. That ain't good for you. Because if you are not careful of a morning dove, notice his desire. Notice verse 6. He said his desire was rest. Somebody shout rest. Y'all getting quiet. I'm looking at some folk who desire some rest. I'm looking at some folk that's so tired of robbing Peter to pay Paul and hiding from James and John. And you're saying, Lord, if I can get a little rest from paying my bills. I'm tired of ignoring phone calls. I'm scared to go to the mailbox because it's just one bill after another. I need some rest. I'm looking at some people who need rest. You're so tired of doctor after doctor. You're so tired of them poking you, poking here and appeal here and appeal there, and you're like David saying, I need some rest. I'm looking at some folk who hellhounds have been on your trail. You've been dipping and dodging, trying to stay ahead of the devil, but seem like the more you take 3 steps forward, the devil tries